have CS
Thank you,
for
Chair and Committee.
HB 1317. Representative Roach. I know there's a strike call, so you can briefly describe and then go into the strike call.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Chair Rommel, Ranking Member Tant, General Maney, members of the committee that are present. This is the Resiliency and Safe Structures Act, Mr. Chairman. It creates a new section of the building code found in Section 553 of the Florida statutes. Seeks to ensure that unsafe structures can be replaced with new resilient structures. The scope of the bill is limited in application in that it only refers to non-conforming buildings in FEMA coastal high hazard areas, buildings that are deemed unsafe by local governments, and buildings that are ordered to be demolished by local governments. There is an exception in the bill for structures listed in the National Register of Historic Places, and there is a carve-out for single-family homes. That is the bill, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, and I understand Representative Tant, you have a title amendment, Amendment A1 93 60 69. Oh, could do you have Representative Tant's amendment right there? You want to read? Or?
I'm capable of explaining it. Yes, sir.
You want to explain that for us?
Sure. Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Yes. Thank you. Okay. So members, what Representative Tant's amendment does, and I would commend her with the very astute and detailed read of the bill, is if you look at the title language seems to conflict with Section 3 of the bill, which lists out the categories that this applies to and makes it clear that any new development structures, and this is in lines 89 through 91 of the bill, would have to be developed in accordance with all local land use, zoning, and other land development rights. And what the title amendment seems to do is to give it seems to make it where any building could be knocked down within the half mile, despite it not being an unsafe structure or a structure that seemed to be destroyed by the local government. So Representative Tant pointed out that conflict that would seem to signify a legislative intent that should not be interpreted into this bill. So this is a friendly amendment. I think the amendment makes it crystal clear that the bill is narrowed in scope to only 3 types of buildings: those that are non-conforming with FEMA, those that are deemed unsafe by a local government, or those that a local government has determined can be demolished. And it also makes it crystal clear that any new construction would have to be developed in accordance with all land use, zoning, and other land development restrictions put in by local governments, including height of buildings. That is the amendment, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any questions on the amendment? No questions on the amendment. Do we have any public testimony on the amendment? None on the amendment. Any debate on the amendment? Will show Representative Tant's amendment adopted without objection. We are back on the strike call. Members, any questions on the strike call? No questions on the strike call. Any public testimony on the strike call? Jess M. McCarty from Miami-Dade. Waive in opposition. Commissioner Alex Fernandez, City of Miami Beach. Wishing to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Representative Roach. Thank you for your generous time. The City of Miami Beach, will stand to continue working with you on improving this bill to protect our historic properties. The City of Miami Beach is proud to be the iconic skyline of South Florida for its Art Deco architecture, for its architecturally significant properties. I'm sure many present in the room have seen Scarface, have seen Miami Vice, CSI Miami, Ballers. All of these highlight that iconic skyline that is internationally known. And it's internationally known, it's part of our economy, it's what attracts tourism to South Florida. It is part of the economic engine of Miami-Dade County and the City of Miami Beach. This bill would jeopardize that. When we talk about non-conforming structures in this bill, we're talking about buildings that are within a half-mile radius, a half-mile distance from the coastline. Half-mile distance. That is half of the city of Miami Beach. Miami Beach is only 1 mile wide. So half a mile goes from the coast to halfway into our city. And these FEMA zones cover the entire city of Miami Beach. So the entire city of Miami Beach practically is within these FEMA flood zones. And half of the width of our city is within that half-mile distance of the coast. This will significantly jeopardize the historic structures that are iconic, that have placed us in the map, that we have seen in so many of these films and that attract tourism to our region. And when we talk about demolishing unsafe structures, not all buildings deemed unsafe are in imminent danger of collapse or failure. In fact, tagging buildings is often the only way to bring some of these buildings into compliance, and sometimes they get tagged as unsafe for something as simple as losing siding. And now, a property owner could apply for demolition, and a historic property could be lost just because it was marked as unsafe. I fear that people who wish to circumvent the historic preservation codes that have protected this iconic skyline will take advantage of a well-intended bill to hurt what is so important to Miami Beach and in our economy. I urge you to please reconsider the impacts of this bill. We are a certified local government under federal standards, and with that comes the responsibility for us as a local government to protect historic properties under the National Historic Preservation Act. We have that responsibility, being a certified local government, and this bill would preempt us in that ability. So we ask you to please help us preserve our economic engine, which is these historic districts. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Commissioner. Members, we're in debate. Seeing no debate. Do we have any public testimony? Oh, we did. We're done with that. Okay. I'm sorry. We will show that amendment. Members, we're in debate on that amendment. Debate, no debate. We'll show. All right, ma'am, I see your hand. Are you on the amendment? Okay, we'll get back to Bill. Okay, we'll show that amendment adopted without objection. We are back on the bill. Members, questions on the bill as amended? Rep. Joseph.
Thank you. We're on questions now.
Correct.
Okay. I just wanted to understand, can you speak to some of the concerns that were raised by the mayor?
You can.
Yeah, thank you. And, you know, listen, I will continue to meet and work with groups that feel that their community is being, is going to be negatively impacted by this. But I just think that his read of what this bill permits and what this bill will do as an operation of law are not the same. And again, I want to talk about how narrow the scope of this bill is. This bill only applies to buildings that do not conform with the FEMA standards, buildings that are deemed unsafe by local governments, and that buildings that are ordered to be demolished by the local governments. To the extent that there's a concern by local government, I will remind the local government that of these three areas where this bill applies, the local governments are absolutely in control of two of them. One is federal. It's FEMA standard. We have nothing to do with that. But the local governments have to deem the building unsafe, right? The local governments have to order that the building to be demolished. Those are completely within control of the city council or the county commission. So they can absolutely make those determinations themselves or not make them if there's a concern there. And then I would call your attention to the bill in lines 52 through 55. So this is about as clear as I can make it. When it says restrictions on redevelopment prohibited, it says that local government shall authorize replacement structures to be developed to the maximum height and overall building size authorized by local development regulation. So again, the local zoning codes will take precedent. You know, they have the ability to ensure that any replacement structure is going to conform to those local zoning codes. And that would apply in those historic districts as well. If there's a height provision or if the facade needs to match whatever the other buildings are doing, as long as that's a zoning regulation that they have that would apply to any similarly situated vacant parcel in that area, those zoning regulations would be into effect. So I think the locals have control over this to a much greater extent than they may realize, but the intent of the bill, and this is why Representative Tant's amendment was a friendly amendment, the intent of this bill is not to allow a skyscraper in Miami Beach Art Deco District or in St. Augustine or in Palm Beach. That's not the intent of the bill. The intent of the bill is to ensure that structures that are damaged and destroyed by storms like Hurricane Ian can be rebuilt in a way that makes them insurable, right? Because if you're forcing them to rebuild an exact same structure and not raise the structure, you're doing two things, both of which are bad. You're rendering a building uninsurable, and you're virtually ensuring that the next storm that comes through will knock that building down again, and then the owner, or in many cases, the taxpayers are on the hook for subsidizing the rebuilding of the structure.
Follow?
Thank you. So outside of that clarification and the acceptance of Representative Tant's amendment to address that, I appreciate that. Where are you on any outstanding points of contention based on what he just testified before us?
You're recognized to follow any of the commissioner's concerns.
Yeah, I just would have to say that I do not think. Look, and I respect Commissioner. We've spoken about the bill. I believe that he's sincere in his concern, but I do not think this bill is going to allow for the kind of structures to be built that he's concerned about. I don't think that this represents, will jeopardize the historic Art Deco district of Miami. That's not my intent. That's not what I want to do. And I've gone on record in every committee. I don't want to be the guy that goes down in history as putting up a skyscraper in Miami's Art Deco district or in St. Augustine Beach. That's not the intent of the bill. I don't think the bill does that. If there's additional language that we can use to make that even clearer, I'm willing to look at that. Every committee stop, we have tightened this language and tightened this language and tightened this language. I think it's crystal clear what the bill does, what the bill does not do, and where the locals have control, which I think there's still a good bit of local control in the bill.
Thank you. Last follow-up?
Follow?
Thank you. And I understand the commissioner's testimony. I don't know if you could tell us, is his testimony representative of the entire Miami Beach Commission, inclusive of the mayor, or just him?
Rep. Roach, I don't think you can
can't
really
speak to
answer
that.
for the commissioner. Thank you.
Okay.
Next, additional question? No additional questions. Public testimony. Christopher Strasburg from Americans for Prosperity, waiving in support. Melissa Whitley from Florida Trust of Historic Preservation, waive in opposition. Matthew Forrest, Town of Palm Beach, waive in opposition. Kevin Crowder from Self, I wish to appear as a proponent. Kevin? Kevin's a proponent of the bill. Stacy Kilroy, Ronaldo, she's a proponent of the bill, wishing to appear. Welcome. And you're recognized.
Thank you, sir. My name is Stacy Kilroy Ronaldo, and I and Kevin Crowder represent an organization called Business Flair. Kevin Crowder was the Economic Development Director for the City of Miami Beach for 17 years. I was a HUD monitor of historic housing for affordable. I renovated historic theaters, the Colony, Old City Hall. I designated the Ocean Beach Historic District. I was appointed by the Mayor and City Commission to the board of the Miami Design Preservation League. I was on the Miami-Dade Local Mitigation Strategy Steering Committee giving out FEMA money for 10 years. And I administered $54 million of critical coastal infrastructure on the island to fix spalling and install many structural components that were actually not there. And the points we have to make are two. One has to do with economics. The first is that time and money spent on limiting building owners is a lost opportunity to focus on human problems. In some coastal areas, this intrusion into owners' rights has gotten so bad that frivolous and bombastic actions have taken place, used to grab attention. It creates a power imbalance so that unsafe, marginal coastal architecture is more important than residents, businesses, safety, and the economy. There is only anecdotal evidence regarding the historic character in Miami's barrier islands as being an economic driver. There is not any conclusive or deductive economic analysis that supports that point of view. It's just been said over and over and over again, And as economists, Mr. Crowder and I want to tell you, it is conclusively the beach that is the economic engine on all Florida coasts. That's number one. And two, the nightlife. The two largest nightclubs on the Southeast United States by volume on Miami Beach. Now, I'd like to talk to the Miami-Dade representatives. I'd like to tell you that the structures on the beach, unless they've been renovated to modern code, they're unsafe. I don't care what district they're in. Spalling, being hit by windstorms, and I can say this because I opened up the walls of the hospital on the beach. Unbelievable. There was no construction oversight at the time. There's things that are on plans that don't exist, structural walls. So we have absolutely believed that there is no character at all to any of it, and certainly no character to non-contributing structures. However, the character of coastal Miami-Dade, like the Art Deco district, is built on the structural racism that Carl Fisher crafted when he created America's playground as a sundown town. All white Gentiles and later whites of any religion.
We got to bring this in for a landing.
Yep, we are. Just no people of color. South Beach was a planned ghetto. Miami Beach and the Barrier Islands have no historic character at all. They are the worst of Florida.
Thank you for your testimony. John Reagan, City of St. Augustine. Wave in opposition, and then Nancy Sikes-Kline, City of St. Augustine. Welcome, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for Roach, Representative Roach, for working with us.
Just speak up a little.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Redo. Restart. Thank you for having me and allowing me this time. And thank you, Representative Roach, for conversations before this. St. Augustine is in the city of St. Augustine is in opposition to this bill. We are the nation's oldest continuously occupied settlement in the United States. We have distinctive architecture, quite unique, and our historic preservation is really the economic engine upon which we stand. The language in the bill is still not as satisfactory to protect the city's ability to prevent demolitions of our historic structures and incompatible new construction. Specifically, item 5, item A, limits for any reason, as it reads, limit for any reason the development potential of replacement structures below the maximum allowed by local development regulations. Again, the city of St. Augustine does limit mass and to match mass and scale for adjacent structures. So this is important to us, and it would take away our ability, like I said, to regulate incompatible new construction. Item B, in that same section 5, it would require replication. It would prohibit the requirement of replication of a demolished structure. Again, we do in our historic districts, since our architecture is primarily Spanish colonial styles, we do in our historic districts downtown require replication of Spanish colonial styles, what we call compatible new construction. And again, item C, which would may not require the preservation of any elements of a demolished structure. We in the city of St. Augustine do have, and many times will require that parts of buildings be saved and reused, sometimes original hardware, coquina block, and so that new structure blends in. So what is built is blends in. So we request that the entire city of St. Augustine be carved out of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, we're in debate. Debate? Seeing no debate, Representative Roach, you are up. Representative Joseph, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, we've heard some concerns about some specific municipalities that seem like they have some unique characteristics, such as St. Augustine and Miami Beach. Have you entertained, if you can address this in your closing, doing an amendment?
Rep. Joseph, we're debate.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you asked him a question.
And I was going to say, can you
Okay.
address it in your debate? This is my
Okay,
debate.
go ahead.
Thank you. If you wouldn't mind addressing this in your closing, the potential of carving out some of these municipalities to address their concerns in a way that does not obfuscate the underlying goal of the bill. So that's my question, my debate.
All right, seeing no more debate, Rep. Broach, if you would like to answer those questions in your close, you're welcome to, or you can close any way you like.
Yes, sir. Happy to answer the debate. Absolutely. So one thing that we tried to do in the strike all is we tried to address the concerns specifically of St. Augustine. And the way we tried to do that is we put into the strike all that the applicability of the bill applies to structures that are within a half-mile of the coast and are also in the FEMA zones that we talked about identified by the flood insurance rate maps. Now, I was told, and I'm not going to render a judgment on it, but the lawyers who wrote that language assured me that that would effectively take out the city of St. Augustine. The city of St. Augustine in a conversation today are telling me that's close, but it's not close enough. So I have committed to them that I will go back to the drawing board and try to figure out if we need to further reduce that to a quarter mile or if there's some other actions that we can take. So I'm on the record. I would work with them to address their concerns while still ensuring that the intent of the bill is met, which I want to tell you what the key takeaway is here. What we're trying to do is we want all property owners who are building a replacement structure to enjoy the same land use, zoning, and other land development rights as other property owners in that community. We don't want them to have any superior rights to other landowners, but we also don't want them to be punished by local governments for exercising their right to build a replacement structure in one of those three cases: when it's a non-conforming with FEMA flood elevation, when it's deemed unsafe, again, by a local government, or when it's ordered to be demolished, again, by a local government. And the benefits, just as one of the commentators spoke, is it supports public safety, it supports resiliency, it makes housing more affordable, increases property values, increases revenue to local governments, it lowers insurance premiums, and it helps alleviate blight by allowing otherwise uninsurable properties to be rebuilt and redeveloped in accordance with modern building codes. Mr. Speaker, or
Kimberly, please
Chair.
call the roll.
Chair Rommel,
Yes.
Vice Chair Maney. Republican Committee Whip Barrero,
Yes.
Ranking Democratic Member Tant,
Yes.
Representatives Antone,
Yes.
Arrington,
Yes.
Barnaby,
Yes.
Benjamin,
Yes.
Daniels,
Yes.
Duggan, Chair Lombardo, Joseph,
No.
Lamarcus,
Yes.
Leak is excused. Mello, Overdorf,
Yes, ma'am.
Rudman,
Yes.
Soroy,
Yes.
Steele,
Yes.
Tremont,
Yes.
Yeager.
Yes.
The bill passes, sir.
Thank you. By vote, we'll show that bill reported favorably.